Have you ever noticed how one person's opinion can change your entire day? A compliment from your boss can leave you smiling all the way home. But one careless comment from a stranger online can stay with you for weeks. Why? Why do we replay conversations in our heads long after they've ended? Why do we worry about what complete strangers think of us? And why does rejection hurt so much more than we think it should? Most people believe the answer is simple. They'll tell you it's because you're insecure, or that you just need more confidence. But modern psychology and neuroscience suggest something much deeper. Before we begin, if you enjoy learning about the science behind human behavior, consider subscribing to Mind Canvas. Every new subscriber helps us spread evidence-based mental health education and encourages conversations grounded in research instead of myths. If this video teaches you something new, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Now here's a question. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that everyone around you suddenly wanted nothing to do with you. Your friends stop replying to your messages. Your colleagues avoid sitting next to you. Your neighbors look the other way when you greet them. Nothing about your intelligence has changed. Nothing about your personality has changed. Yet something inside you begins to panic. Why? Because your brain doesn't experience rejection as a small inconvenience. It experiences it as a threat. And to understand why, we need to travel back, not hundreds of years, but tens of thousands of years. Long before smartphones. Long before schools. Long before South Africa, Europe, Asia, or any country existed. Humans survived in small groups. These groups weren't just communities. They were your entire world. If your group accepted you, you had food to share, protection from predators, help raising children, and a better chance of surviving harsh environments. If your group rejected you, the consequences could be devastating. You were suddenly more vulnerable to hunger, violence, disease, and isolation. Over thousands of generations, natural selection favored brains that paid close attention to social acceptance. Not because people wanted popularity, because belonging increased the chances of survival. That ancient survival system still exists inside your brain today. The world has changed. Your biology hasn't caught up completely. Today, being ignored on WhatsApp won't stop you from finding food. Not getting enough likes on Instagram won't leave you stranded in the wilderness. Yet your brain often reacts as though social exclusion still carries life or death consequences. That's because evolution works far more slowly than technology. Here's something remarkable. Researchers have found that social rejection activates brain regions involved in processing the distress of physical pain, including the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula. That doesn't mean emotional pain and physical pain are identical. They aren't, but it does tell us something extraordinary. Your brain treats rejection as something important enough to demand your attention. Think about that for a moment. Your emotional pain isn't simply a sign that you're weak. It's evidence that your brain evolved to protect your connection to other people. Now consider everyday life in South Africa. Imagine you've just graduated after years of studying. You send out dozens of CVs, then hundreds. Weeks pass, months pass. The emails never come. Friends begin posting pictures of new jobs. Family members keep asking the same question. So, have you found work yet? The stress isn't only financial. Gradually, your brain can begin interpreting repeated silence as something personal. Even when the economy is difficult and unemployment affects millions, the mind can quietly ask a painful question. What if I'm not good enough? That's one of the brain's greatest tricks. It often mistakes circumstances for identity. And that's where the real problem begins. Because once your brain starts believing your worth depends on other people's approval, You'll begin chasing something that can never truly satisfy you. And the strangest part, most of this happens without you ever realizing it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The need for approval doesn't begin when you create your first social media account. It begins long before you can even speak. No baby enters the world wondering whether they are successful, popular, or attractive. Babies are born with one goal: connection. Psychologists have known for decades that early relationships shape the way children understand themselves and other people. When caregivers consistently respond with warmth, protection, and emotional availability, children gradually develop what's called a secure attachment. Without realizing it, the child's brain begins learning one simple message: the world is generally safe. My feelings matter. I am worthy of care. But life isn't always that simple. Sometimes caregivers are loving. Sometimes they're emotionally unavailable. Sometimes they're overwhelmed by stress, poverty, illness, or responsibilities far beyond their control. The child doesn't understand any of that. Instead, the developing brain searches for patterns. If I get good marks, people smile. If I'm quiet, there are fewer arguments. If I make everyone happy, they won't leave. Over time, those experiences can become unconscious beliefs. I matter when I perform. I matter when I'm useful. I matter when other people approve of me. Notice something important. Nobody had to say those words out loud. The brain learned them on its own. This is one of the most fascinating things about the human mind. Your brain isn't a recording device. It's a prediction machine. Every second of every day, it's trying to answer one question: what is about to happen next? Imagine touching a hot stove. Your brain remembers. The next time you reach toward heat, it predicts danger before you even feel pain. Social experiences work in a surprisingly similar way. If you've repeatedly experienced criticism, humiliation, bullying, or rejection, your brain starts looking for those patterns everywhere. A friend replies with only one word. Your brain whispers, "They're upset with me." Your manager says, "Can we talk tomorrow?" Suddenly your heart starts racing. A stranger doesn't smile back. Now you're wondering if you did something wrong. Most of the time, nothing happened. Your brain simply filled in the missing information using old experiences. Psychologists call this predictive processing. The brain is constantly making educated guesses about reality before all the evidence is available. And here's why that matters. Your brain would rather make a false alarm than miss a real threat. From an evolutionary perspective, assuming danger when there wasn't any was often less costly than ignoring danger when it was real. That ancient strategy may have helped your ancestors survive. But in today's world, it can quietly fuel anxiety, overthinking, people-pleasing, and the exhausting habit of constantly asking yourself, what do they think about me? Have you ever rewritten a message 3 or 4 times before sending it? Or replayed a conversation all night because you thought you sounded foolish? Maybe you've apologized for something that wasn't even your fault. Those behaviors often feel like personality traits. But psychology suggests they may be the visible symptoms of something much deeper. A brain that has become exceptionally good at predicting rejection. And just when you think you've escaped that cycle, your own brain introduces another powerful force, one that rewards approval itself. And that's where dopamine enters the story. For years, dopamine was called the pleasure chemical. Today, neuroscientists know the story is more complicated than that. Dopamine isn't simply about pleasure. It's deeply involved in motivation, learning, and helping the brain notice rewards and predict when something important might happen. Imagine posting a photo online. You put your phone down. 5 minutes later, you pick it up again, nothing. 10 minutes later, a notification appears. Someone liked your post. It feels surprisingly satisfying. Not because one notification changes your life, but because your brain has just received a small social reward. Now imagine that reward arriving at unpredictable times. Sometimes you receive 10 notifications, sometimes none. That unpredictability is exactly what keeps many people checking again and again. Your brain starts asking one silent question: will the next time be different? Psychologists call this variable reinforcement. It's one reason behaviors can become so persistent. The same learning principle has been studied across many areas of psychology because unpredictable rewards can be especially powerful in maintaining behavior. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Social media didn't create your need for approval. It found a need that evolution had already built into the human brain. Technology simply gives that ancient system far more opportunities to seek social feedback. Think about how often people delete a post that doesn't get enough attention, or hesitate to share an opinion because they're worried about what strangers might think, or compare their lives to carefully edited moments from people they've never even met. The platform may be modern. The psychology is ancient, and you don't need social media to see it. Imagine a student walking across a university campus in Pretoria. They believe everyone is judging the way they're dressed. Every mistake feels obvious. Every awkward moment feels unforgettable. But here's what psychologists discovered. Most people are far too busy thinking about themselves to notice the small things you're worried about. This is known as the spotlight effect. We consistently overestimate how much other people notice our appearance, our mistakes, and our behavior. In other words, the audience you imagine watching you often exists mostly inside your own mind. Now think about everyday life. Maybe you've stayed quiet during a family discussion because you didn't want to disappoint your parents. Maybe you've agreed with friends even though you disagreed inside. Maybe you've chosen a career because it sounded respectable instead of asking yourself what truly mattered to you. In many communities, including here in South Africa, family expectations can be a powerful source of support, identity, and motivation. But they can also create pressure when your own goals and the expectations of others don't align. Sometimes we tell ourselves we're simply being respectful. Sometimes that's true. But sometimes we're protecting ourselves from something much deeper: the possibility of losing approval. And here's the irony. The more your self-worth depends on approval, the less freedom you have to become the person you actually want to be. Because every decision begins with the same question: what will they think? Instead of the question that changes lives: what do I actually believe? The most surprising part is, psychology doesn't say the solution is to stop caring about other people. In fact, that would ignore one of the most fundamental needs of being human. The real answer is far more interesting, and it begins with understanding the difference between belonging and becoming dependent on approval.